What's up everyone, it's ENDYMION, and as if the current news cycle couldn't get any more insufferable, it seems now that woke games journalists are throwing their hats into the political ring, because of course they are. Also, in terms of footage here, nothing really makes sense, so whatever, cool video game montage backgrounds it is then. Beyond this, there's an update I want to go over from my previous video about Jack Black and how games journalism is going to be intrinsically tied to this godforsaken election, whether we like it or not. And I also want to go over how Microsoft is apparently dumping diversity, equity, and inclusion to a certain degree when it comes to their next wave of games. To be real with you guys, I kind of miss the times before the whole attack on Trump thing because we actually had more nuanced news. Now everything, for the foreseeable future, is going to be about Trump and the various weirdos out there wishing for more violence. Anyways, to start from that Park Place, Sweet Baby Inc. defender and The Verge's video game reporter Ash Parrish appears to endorse assassination attempt against President Donald Trump. In case you don't remember who this Sweet Baby defender is, Ash Parrish works for The Verge, a video game website that is about as woke as the rest of them. During the beginnings of Gamergate 2, Ash was one of the original stalwart defenders of SBI and was pushing hard against the narrative. They wrote a big article about it, you probably remember it. It was called The Return of Gamergate is Smaller and Sadder, where Ash spends the entire time trying to claim that what's happened against Sweet Baby Inc. was a nothing burger, and that players who were openly against their inclusion within games was pointless, and that SBI never went out of their way to ruin video games on purpose. Even though we are all aware of the many fumbles and closures that are directly tied to SBI as well. Also, in that same article, Ash wrote that she never once mentions the actual reason as to why Gamergate 2 was happening in the first place, claiming that it was simply done by a group of racist gamers who hated women and minorities in video games. Ash went out of her way to say stuff like how the companies who previously worked with Sweet Baby would offer their support to the employees of SBI during the beginnings of Gamergate 2, like Sable's developer or even Mary Kenny of Insomniac, who worked on Spiderman 2, which I already covered recently. But never once during the entire article then or since has Ash Parrish of The Verge actually admitted to why Gamergate 2 started to begin with when it came to actual concrete proof or reasons. After all, as that Park Place said back in March this year, The Verge reporter Ash Parrish admits to excluding Sweet Baby Inc.'s cancellation campaign in order to push woke narrative. This all got exposed when a user named You Read This Wrong posted screenshots of them speaking to Ash Parrish via Discord. And in those Discord chats, which got leaked onto Twitter way back then, it confirmed that this Ash individual was deliberately going out of their way to paint a story in favor of Sweet Baby Inc. over that of the actual victims of the Gamergate 2 event, which was Kabrutus Rambo and his Steam plugin. Ash says in these chats that she believes that Chris Kindred, who is a current employee of Sweet Baby Inc., was not in the wrong trying to silence Kabrutus Rambo. Remember that Gamergate 2 started because Chris Kindred went out of their way to bring light to the situation, and attempted to use their platform to even get Kabrutus silenced and banned off of Steam, as seen here where Kindred deliberately posted Kabrutus' Steam page on purpose in order to rally Steam into giving them what they wanted. So this is who Ash Parrish is defending. Ash said via those Discord chats, and I quote, "We're not going to agree and that's fine, we don't have to. I don't agree that Kindred calling for the report of the Steam list Kabrutus means harassment. Associated with that list was a discussion forum, 100 pages of threads filled with terrible crap up to and including harassment. Getting rid of the list gets rid of the forum, and you'll see now Steam cut that crap out. Those forums are gone, or at least they were last time I checked, and the list is still there. I'm not going to fault Chris Kindred for trying and halfway succeeding and getting a vector for harassment shut down, so that's the first part. You see it your way, I see it mine. As far as the omission of this instigating incident from reporting, okay, let's look at this even holistically, taking everything into account. Chris Kindred finds these lists, asks folks to report the list and its maker. Reports are filed and Steam acts only as far as to delete, lock the forum. The list still exists. This is where the story should end all in all. That's not really report worthy because it's an interpersonal conflict that ends in a stalemate, happens all the time. But as we both know, the story doesn't end there. It continues, and what resulted of that interpersonal conflict was this outsized outpouring of the grossest kinds of bigotry that blew up so big. Well, you see, this is the story. I get that in respect of thoroughness and completeness, not sharing that Kindred started this is upsetting and feels like a lie of omission, but what does including it do? How does including that detail materially change the circumstances of the story? Let's be honest and real here, not much. Does what Kindred did with his tweet warrant the response he, his boss, his company, journalists, and sympathetic developers received? No, not even close. Kindred said, hey, this sucks, let's take this crappy thing down, and the guy who did it, and the response was death threats. And so you run into this thing where including this detail makes it seem like the inciting incident is on equal footing with what happened next, and it's so not. It is so not, end quote. As you can even see back then that Ash of The Verge attempted to steer the conversation surrounding Sweet Baby Inc. from being a company that uses its influence to enact its will to suddenly being a sad puppy that needs help from everyone and their sympathy. The fact that they admit that omitting why the thing happened in the first place is not important, that tells you everything that you need to know about their journalistic integrity when it comes to them reporting on the gaming news side of the conversation. If the truth doesn't matter, then nothing does. This then leads us back to the first article I mentioned in this video. Sorry for the lore dump, but it's important that you understand the kind of person we're dealing with here, as it'll form the basis of why what they say next is so tone-deaf and moronic. So like I said, Ash Parrish of The Verge lied about Sweet Baby and tried to make them the victims. Then recently, as you know, Jack Black and his group Tenacious D were on stage performing when Kyle Gass of the group decided to make a sleight of hand joke about Donald Trump almost being killed. This ended up pissing off a lot of people, understandably so, and since this happened, news has come out. I previously reported on this already, but of course, like always, new information comes out as soon as I publish my video, but that's the nature of news sometimes. Now Jack Black has denounced what Kyle Gass has said during that concert. Here's what he said via Instagram. I was blindsided by what was said at the show on Sunday. I would never condone hate speech or encourage political violence in any form. After much reflection, I no longer feel it is appropriate to continue the Tenacious D tour, and all future creative plans are on hold. I am grateful to the fans for their support and understanding. So it's confirmed that Jack Black has shut down the entire tour completely and refunded everyone of their money. The people I feel the worst for in this situation are the roadies and the people who help set up the shows and, drive the equipment to each venue, because they depend on those paychecks in order to make a living. But unfortunately now, they're obviously out of a job for the time being. And who's to say the personal relationship between Jack and Kyle won't be strained now due to this, because Kyle took it upon himself to be very political at a show he should not have been. After all, concerts are for people to come together, not to drive them apart. As this one user who apparently has experience in the concert life named Educated Hillbilly, they said, let me explain to people who have never worked a concert venue before. After Jack Black and his band Tenacious D celebrated the near assassination of Trump on Saturday, they got about 10,000 calls and texts from all the concert venues they'd booked canceling their reservations. You see, these places have to carry insurance to cover any mass casualty event. Some places, it's literally the law, they have to have a certain level of coverage. So it's very likely that Kyle Gass's comments led to mass cancellation ticket sales for his moronic statements, which I mean is a good thing in the long run. Ash of The Verge would respond after Jack Black said the tour was cancelled, and all that by showing her dismay via social media, as you can see here. Ash would then further double down by saying that Nintendo DreamWorks check got him acting foolish, hate to see it. Ash would then triple down even further with this next rant. Listen, I'm not one of those people who's gonna say violence has no place in politics. Violence in politics is baked into the foundation of this country. It is inextricable. Nothing good we have earned as a country came peacefully, period. What has happened isn't some shocking anomaly. It is the logical conclusion of American life. Violence walks with us in our daily lives, explicit and subtle in capitalism, healthcare, child rearing, and the simple ways we mistreat our fellow human beings. Let's start there, maybe. Another user would respond to Ash by saying the opportunities and advantages that you were blessed with were only possible by you being in this country. You should be grateful to have been born here, but hey, keep complaining, that's what you do best. Ash would then respond with, Oh, hard disagree, baby. What this country has taken and continues to take from me and mine will never ever compare to what it has allegedly given me. My country ain't special, I am though. America has been specifically and meticulously constructed to block progress for all but cis hetero white men. Everything I am and have been has been done in spite of this country, not because of it. Although Ash is incorrect, if anything, especially these days, being anything but a white guy is exactly how you progress and at a faster rate. She is also not special whatsoever, just another woke weirdo that's spewing hate, trying to undermine the fact that her ideological stances when it comes to video games and beyond are being dismantled almost as quickly as she states it. Sweet baby is obviously killing video games. Everyone in the world, especially America, are divided in more ways than one. Ash is upset that someone like Jack Black would apologize, but it tells me one thing, which is more important above all. Which is that, my dear viewers, the tide is turning in more ways than one. It's as Grum said recently, I was going to find my own way of putting it, but honestly, how he said it here is perfect, so let me just read you what he said, and I quote. Kyle Gass of Tenacious D apologizes. I can tell you what is happening here, but most aren't ready to hear it. The majority of people don't actually have their own opinions or rather convictions. They only express what is deemed popular or acceptable according to the Overton window of acceptable discourse. What is happening is a great recalibration of that window. For years, we were told it was acceptable to have political violence on the left, mostly peaceful riots. And that anything on the right, a punch, simple words, okay symbols, walking into a building, was ultra-violent. The media and celebrities led this narrative and cemented the Overton window firmly in their preferred direction. The vast majority of people complied. The social pact demands it. It whipped them into mob mentality, and people did really mean things to each other, cancel culture, etc., because it was acceptable and approved by the narrative. Sounds like the rise of some country's political movement you know from history. This is how good people turn into bad people. But after the actual visceral failures, the Biden debate, that window began to shift. No amount of cognitive bias could prevent people from going, this is weird, we've been lied to. COVID revelations helped too. It became acceptable for people for the first time in a long time to question the narrative. They could now talk about it at the office, at home, in public, and social media. That was not possible a month ago. So in just 2 weeks later, we had the attempted assassination of Trump, and people unfortunately lost their lives or were injured. Nothing squared up anymore. The ultimate violence was not from the right as they were told, but to the right. The deaths were real. The tragedy was real. Some people unaware of the deaths or slow to process the events continue to reinforce the old overturned window. Now their co-workers and friends and family, free to question for the first time, reacted against them. The public and the media reacted against them. This is what happened to Kyle Gass and Jack Black here. They didn't read the room. They didn't catch what was happening to the window, and they fell outside of it. The backlash was swift and harsh, and not just from the right, but from people in their immediate circle, even the media. There are some who really do believe the assassination was faked or justified, that Trump really is the big H of our times. These are the radicals who have been yanking at the overturned window for years and who, until now, have successfully skewed and skewered it to their side. They are the ones who are not apologizing, not deleting, not retracting, and still gnashing their teeth. They are the ones that wrecked things for a long time. These people are unredeemable, and we should never forgive them for what they did to our country and much of the world. For they truly are destructive and violent and not really part of the social pact. But here is the part most aren't ready to hear. The majority of people aren't those people. They look like them, sound like them, hated like them, and even did some very bad things, but they were told to, programmed to. Again, most people do not have their own strong moral core or opinions. The survival instinct of civilization tells them to just go with the flow, even when that flow has been hijacked for bad purposes. That hard part? You're going to have to forgive them. To heal as a country and a nation, you have to let these people change their minds. They will go from saying horrible things and even doing them to wherever we are headed next. Hopefully, that next is peace and unity and gradual abandonment of the current woke policies that have so divided us and damaged us as a nation. That historical country I mentioned earlier or others you know, they all changed too. Most people aren't ready to hear that yet, but I suspect this is where Trump is headed, and maybe after his speech more will see it. But until then, this is why I and others are very loudly pointing out people falling outside the moving Overton window and still espousing hate. Some are radicals and some are the masses. I don't want anyone cancelled or fired, and I want the window to shift back away from the abyss. That is why we have to point it out every time, especially now, when we have a chance to change that what we haven't had in a very, very long time." End quote. And Grums put it beautifully right now. In this moment we're living where things can possibly finally change for once in years. Up until now, everything was status quo. You couldn't question anything, you couldn't say nothing, you just had to go with the flow. Elon suddenly buys Twitter and gives it back its free speech. That spills over to other platforms like YouTube and relatively newer ones like Kick, for example, as well. All of this free speech is thriving because people are finally waking up to things. We've been living in a cloud of darkness for far too long. Obviously, prior to 2021, channels like mine didn't even exist yet. And a lot of these narratives from games, movies, and more, they weren't being challenged by enough people. Now it is. Now people know what woke is. They know what DEI stands for. The normies, for lack of a better term, are waking up to the realization that, oh wait, it looks like everything is ass backwards, isn't it? I fight pretty much every day trying to change people's minds when it comes to media, because for far too long, many of you and myself, I must admit, accepted what was going on without doing anything about it. Everything was getting worse. Narratives became leftist echo chambers, and then video games, movies, TV, and even stuff like comics, they've all been degrading for years. And it's crazy that what took the nation to wake up and finally go, hey, all of this and more kind of sucks, was when the orange guy almost got shot in the head during a rally. We've been telling you for years now that a lot of this stinks and that you need to become aware of it and stop ignoring the obvious but painful truths around you. Video games will not get better unless people vote with their wallets. Movies, like the Marvel and Star Wars stuff, will only get more woke unless you stop supporting these movies. And it's the same with general politics too. Wake up everybody and put your game faces on. This is finally a moment where we can all actually create real change in this world of ours for once. It's not surprising that a Sweet Baby Inc. Defender journalist is mad at the current state of events, because they've been working for years to suppress, indoctrinate, and terrify the general public into obeying them. But now they don't control you anymore. Games journalists have little power these days, and it's not just because of people like me and others. They ultimately did it to themselves. These narratives are dying. They are thrashing like freaks in a bucket, trying to find a way out. And we need to keep the pressure in order to enact real change here. Even Microsoft is starting to change their tune somewhat as well. From Business Insider, Microsoft laid off a DEI team and its lead wrote an internal email blasting how DEI is no longer business critical. According to Business Insider, the jumping off point for DEI in terms of games and general media, it all stemmed from the whole George Floyd event in 2020. And since then, companies have tried to uplift people based on color or gender instead of merit, and I think you can go look at the past 4 years of entertainment, and I don't need to tell you how much worse it's been compared to prior to 2020. As one team leader of Microsoft said via an email, true systems change work associated with DEI programs everywhere are no longer business critical or smart as they were in 2020. This also comes in the same report where Business Insider confirms that even places like Google, Meta, and even Zoom have laid off DEI teams as well recently. Although to save face, Jeff Jones, who's a spokesperson for Microsoft, said this in an interview. Our D&I commitments remain unchanged, our focus on diversity and inclusion is unwavering, and we are holding firm on our expectations, prioritizing accountability and continuing to focus on this work. You ask me? I don't believe him. I think he's just trying to save face, but how can you still be all in on DEI when you're going out of your way to fire the very people who were put there to enforce that in the first place? It's like a lifeguard getting laid off at a beach and the manager tells you that we are very serious about public safety at the beach. Ignore the fact that we just fired the person whose job it was to literally save people on that beach. That's not important. You can just look at Microsoft's track record, and many of their games are failing or have failed already. Hellblade 2, Redfall, the list just keeps going. All games made with DEI in place and wokeness backing it, none of them worked out and they all failed financially. Every best-selling game of the year so far has been largely anti-woke until proven otherwise, like Helldivers or Asian-made media. Like Grum said earlier, we're at a turning point here where these companies were adamant that they could continue down these paths with no pushback. And now, across the board, everything is failing and pushback is unending, and I say good, great even. We need this so much right now. If the wokies of the world are panicking and pissing in their boots, it means that we're winning, fellas, and we're winning good. You just need to keep up the pressure. I actually can't believe that Jack Black and Kyle Gass got cancelled pretty much by the leftist-owned media. You guys need to realize how big of a deal that is. This means that the tide is shifting like crazy overnight, and it's amazing to see. Even an Australian politician said to ban Tenacious D from Australia. Here's what they said in their letter. Tenacious D should be immediately removed from the country after wishing for the assassination of Donald Trump at their Sydney concert, Senator Ralph Babbitt said today. Tenacious D member Kyle Gass, making a birthday wish, told concertgoers that he hoped the next person to shoot at Trump did not miss. I condemn in the strongest possible way the call to political violence by Tenacious D in Sydney on Sunday, the United Australia Party senator said. To advocate and/or wish for the assassination of a president is egregious, disgusting, filthy, evil, and not acceptable in any way, shape, or form. This was not a joke. He was deadly serious when he wished for the death of the president. I call on the Prime Minister Anthony Albanese to join me in denouncing Tenacious D, Jack Black, and band member Kyle Gass, and I call on the Immigration Minister Andrew Gillies to revoke their visas and deport them immediately. Anything less than deportation is an endorsement of the shooting and attempted assassination of Donald J. Trump, the 45th and soon-to-be 47th President of the United States. Australia wrongly locked up Novak Djokovic and deported him because he allegedly undermined public trust in vaccination. Allowing Tenacious D to remain in Australia after calling for the death of a president is unthinkable, and it affirms the weakness of our current Prime Minister, Senator Babbitt said. So, there you have it, fellas. The tide is indeed changing. Whether it's Sweet Baby Inc. or leftist rotted brain celebrities, they simply cannot run around spewing their hate anymore against one side of the aisle. Honestly, I love to see all of this, so let's keep it up, keep our foot down, and keep the pressure on. Let's go until we change it all. Gaming, movies, politics, whatever else, this world has for too long been one way, and it clearly hasn't been working. And it's time to change things and raise a little hell while we're at it. So I thank you for watching, subscribe, share, like the video. Thanks to my patrons and members, and have a wonderful day. Take care of yourselves. I'm proud of all of you, and I'll see you in the next one.